Hey, welcome into Restaurants in Pop Culture, presented by Squared Sodas. I'm Jensen Cummings. This over here is MC32. Chris, what's going
Got
on?
it right. Yeah, what up?
Man, I'm ready to get it. I'm starting to feel the vibe, the groove of this show as we've gone along, man, and getting into episode 6 now. We appreciate everybody following along. Now that's about the vanity metrics, but the numbers have been unbelievable. I mean, our short form content through just a few handful of episodes we've done are, over 1.2 million people checking out our clips and stuff, man. So
All right. Yeah,
congratulations. Like, that's great. I think it's the bear has a lot to do with it. It's hot right now.
for sure.
Our industry is starving for somebody to give context to what happens in movies and TV that we appreciate, don't appreciate. We want to see heroes and villains that do in fact represent us in a meaningful way. So I think that's why I think we're seeing some love right now. So appreciate everybody for being a part of this journey so far. So let's get into RIP006. We're gonna talk worst cliche food scenes. This was your baby. You were like, man, I got some ones I just can't stand. They're cringe when you see them. We're also on to episode 5 of The Bear. This episode called Pop, and a lot about opening a restaurant, which is something you and I have both done a lot of. We say anybody who's in the industry, you want to learn as quickly as possible. You'll learn more in 3 months than you might in 3 years other places. A lot is what not to do, but opening a restaurant is definitely the way to do that. So we'll get into that. And we got our homies at Tender Belly now that are part of the team as well. So we're going to do a top 3 all time presented by Tender Belly. And we're going to have our guy, Shannon Duffy, be a part of that. So let's hear what Shannon had to say, bringing us into this cliche movie scene.
Hey everybody, Shannon Duffy here. Hope you're doing well. This week we're bringing the top 3 worst movie cliche scenes. I'm going with just the general scene of a couple eating pasta at a dinner table and then sucking the pasta and coming together for a kiss. So annoying.
I love it. Shannon, we got Ted Whitney was on. Ted Whitney is going to be the lover. Shannon is like me. He's like a curmudgeon. He's like, God, it's so annoying, man. Now, worst cliche scenes. I definitely considered the pasta romance scene of Lady and the Tramp. That definitely was one that warrants some consideration as far as iconic and as far as like, oh, come on, man, what are we doing here? So, top 3 all time. Let's get into that. Your number 3 worst cliche movie food scene scenario. What do you got?
All right. So for me, it's like the diner scene where there's always like 2 people. One person is at the diner already and they've been grubbing on breakfast. The next person comes down, sits down. They order a black coffee from the waitress. She's like, "What do you have?" And they always get the black coffee, and for whatever reason, there's always pancakes involved. And then they have this conversation and things heat up and suddenly they got to go. And so there's all this food left on the table. The other person's order didn't even show up yet and they're already bouncing. There's a movie called Two Guns that has Mark Wahlberg and Denzel Washington in it. And that scene is like one of those first scenes in the movie where they're across from a bank and they're talking about this bank heist that's going on or whatever. And Mark Wahlberg is sitting in the diner. He's getting down on his breakfast. Denzel comes in. He's like trying to get him to order breakfast. He's like, "Oh, I don't want anything." Mark convinces him to get the pancakes. The pancakes are great. He orders a black coffee, and then they sit there, and all of a sudden, shit starts hitting the fan. They jump up, toss a couple dollar bills on the table, and they're out. And this scene, there's versions of this scene that happen in so many movies.
So many.
And it's like the whole.
You're saying that I can't stop thinking about them. Heat jumps out at me.
Yeah.
With De Niro and his whole crew, Tom Sizemore, Val Kilmer. There, the dude who shoots the guy who ends up being a big part of the story. There's always so much tension there, and the server is always this like nuisance, right? Like, come on, that server is trying to get you coffee and that delicious pie over there. Shout out to better pie in movies than what we talked about in last episode.
Right.
So I'm with you. It happens a lot. Yeah, why are they always in such a fucking hurry?
I wish I like. Y'all could have had this meeting outside in the car. Like, why you gotta waste people? I'm thinking of the line cooks out there or the short order cooks back there having made all this breakfast, and then the food is just wasted on the table. Poor fellas or ladies.
See, now heat comes to mind again, because then he goes in the back, De Niro, and he gets our boy Dennis Haysbert, right, in on the crew, like in the back of the diner too. So, you know, the diner, at least in Heat, had a couple layers to it. But yeah, man, they're always in a hurry and they rush out the door. All right, number 3 for you. Number 3 for me is the gross close-up eating of the bad guy, where it's just like just saliva everywhere, food kind of falling out. They're sweaty and gross. This isn't the like badass. This isn't Christopher Waltz, who very, very adeptly takes down the strudel. These guys are just sleazy weasels, and they're trying to basically make food. The fact that somebody can't eat and has no table manners apparently makes them a sleazy villain that you hope is going to get their comeuppance. And they always end badly, right? They always die badly, those dudes who can't keep food in their mouth. The one that I think of, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Yep, I knew
right?
it was gonna be that one, because that's like,
come on,
that's the first thing that pops in my head, with the tomato and
oh man, Denethor, right? The steward of Gondor, Boromir's father, John Noble, the actor, great actor. And man, I mean, he crushed it, because I was just grossed out. I was like, I hope this dude dies.
Yeah.
Like,
I wonder how many takes
I hope
that
this
took.
dude. Come on. Oof, man. It's nasty. Eat properly, people. Come on. All right. That was my number 3. Number 2 for you.
All right. Number 2 for me, still in the line with the villains, is when you have the upscale villain that's always eating like a steak by themselves in a restaurant. They're eating like a rare steak or like a slightly mid-rare steak. They're there by themselves, and the protagonist walks in and they're there by themselves. They may have their goons behind them, and they go into this monologue about their plans, not to the point where like their plan can be stopped yet, but it's like their first chance to kind of play cat and mouse with the protagonist, all while eating this. And it's like, I don't know what it is about. I guess they feel like eating a rare steak or like or a mid-rare, but like something red and like juicy, to where it just makes it seem more sinister. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
only
so
really dangerous
that, like,
people eat raw rare steaks.
Right. So I'm thinking of like Joe Pantoliano from Matrix, who's playing Cypher. And he's talking about like, I know that this steak doesn't really exist, but it's still like but he's sitting there, and it's like part of the whole sinister trope is they have to be eating a steak by themselves. And I've seen this again in so many movies, in so many action movies. If it's not, they're usually in like a fine dining setting. Sometimes it's like a country club type of atmosphere where they're like in plush leather seats or whatever.
Or sometimes they're in their office and they have a tank of like piranhas or something ridiculous next to them too, eating the steak. The other thing that comes to mind when you're talking about that, the steak knife, they're always like menacingly cutting and stabbing at that steak knife. And then they'll at some point pick something out of their teeth and go, listen here, you, right? And like be pointing it at them and menacingly be like, I'm probably going to stab you just like I am stabbing this steak right now. Just so you know, I'm a badass because I have a steak knife in my hands. Yeah, those are bad, aren't they?
Yeah.
Man, so food gets a bad rap in movies.
We covered 2 tiers of villains. We got the sloppy villains, and then we got the more sophisticated. They always have a glass of red wine too. It's the steak and the red wine in like a big ass wine glass. And yeah,
they're not eating a cheeseburger and drinking a beer. That's not for that dude. That's the Weasley guy. So depending on what they're eating, you know what level of bad guy in Mario Brothers you're on. Is this the secret level bad guy? No, that's a whole different guy. The secret level bad guy is the one who's like feeding his wild animal. He's like feeding his white tiger, right? Then you're like Bond villain level when you have the animal that you're feeding, like foie gras and rare steak, right? So if you're food falling out of your mouth, sleazy, eating a burger or something like that, you're that guy. Eating the steak, you're a high level boss, and you're elite Bond level if you're feeding your pack of piranhas your enemies.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. I like that. Number 2 for me, the bedroom scene. Keep food out of the bedroom. It's just nothing sexy about it ever. Ever. It's just uncomfortable and awkward. All right, number 1 worst is Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler, Armageddon with the animal crackers with the horrible Australian accent, like he's going on safari. Just come on. I love that movie. That movie's a great classic disaster movie. Come on.
Mhm.
But that scene and those scenes, I can't do it, Chris. It it makes no sense to me
Mhm.
whatsoever. Again, food is just used so poorly in movies. People, stop
Right.
with it already. There's nothing sexy about Ben Affleck going on safari on Tyler's belly button with what is it, a lion hunting the gazelle? I'm not even gonna try to do the accent. It was so bad. I could probably do it as good as Ben Affleck. It's so bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking of like I think of the parody in "Don't Be a Menace to South Central" while drinking your juice in the hood. Where I mean, granted, it doesn't take place in the bedroom, but they're in the kitchen, and he's like pulling out hot dogs, and she's like, "Nah, fool, that's the baby's lunch," and like
Baby's lunch.
pouring pouring like Kool-Aid in her belly button, and like sprinkling hot sauce on her feet,
Hot sauce,
and all
dude.
this.
Oh. See, that's great. I
Oh
mean,
man,
that is brilliant. Wayans brothers at their peak. Wayans brothers ness. See, that's a good use of the ridiculous over the top trope
yeah,
because it's hilariously laughable. That's exactly it. I can't think of that scene being sexy at all with Ben
right,
Affleck and Liv Tyler, but I can think of that scene being hilarious in Don't Be a Menace South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. Like, that's perfect. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Our number ones. What is your number 1 worst movie cliche food scene?
All right, my number one, and this is what actually inspired this top three in general. And I know that as soon as I say it, everybody's gonna resonate with this. Families that have these huge breakfasts, and then like the mom had to have woken up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to get all this food made, and they have this huge spread for breakfast, and then the dad comes down in a rush, and the kids come down in a rush. They get like pop like one thing, or they pop like a piece of toast in their mouth. Like, I got a meeting, or I'm late for school or whatever. And then all this food is just left wasted on the table. There's a scene like that in Karate Kid, although the spread isn't very big because they're leaving in meager means. But like they're with the show Gossip Girl, that was like a huge thing apparently. I read that when I was looking up, but anyway, and then one scene
Big fan of Gossip Girl, are we, Chris?
when I was looking up other examples of the trope, I kept seeing examples of Gossip Girl. I've never actually seen it, but apparently that's a huge thing.
All the fans of Gossip Girl, let us know. Is it a thing?
Yeah, let us know. But yeah, and then there's a show called Greenleaf that I watched. Now this is a little bit different than what I said specifically, but this is just because. So it's basically a black family who owns a church. The father is the pastor. It's played by Keith David, and then there's a litany of actors and actresses, including like Meryl Dandridge, Lynn Whitfield, Deborah Joy Winans, and so they're this big family, just church family, and there's always drama, and they're a wealthy family because of all the church money. So they have this huge house, and I remember a handful of scenes where they would be sitting down at the breakfast table, and then drama would pop off, and then people would get in arguments and just storm off, walk off. And I mean, like they'd have a full, and they had a chef team, so this is like stuff that's been cooked and plated and set on the table, this huge elaborate meal, and then this blow up happens. Nobody touched their food, and all this food just goes to waste. And I remember thinking like how pissed off I would be if I was the chef to know that I just wasted half of my morning making food for these people. I'd be like, these ungrateful, but like, yeah. And so that's one of the things that really inspired this, because then I started thinking about how often it happens in TV shows and movies, and it happens a lot of times.
Why are we wasting so much food?
Yeah.
Why are we wasting so much food, Hollywood?
There's even like there's on Reddit, there's a bunch of different like forums and Ask Americans where a lot of people from other countries are like, do Americans really eat like that for breakfast? Like, do Americans really not eat their like have whole huge plates of food and then nobody eats it and they storm off like in the movies? Because it's like it's such a cliche that it happens all the time that people actually think that that's how we're living.
Right. The gluttonous Americans strike again.
Yeah.
Come on, people. Take care of that food. This is funny. As you're saying that, I'm trying to catch up and think of some scenes like that. We just been watching Lyle Crocodile with Javier Bardem and Skeeter. What's Skeeter's last name? Yeah, man, Constance Wu is in it as well. Shawn Mendes plays the voice of Lyle Crocodile. There we go. Let me catch up there a little bit. And they do the same thing. It's like the dopey husband going, "Oh, how's my tie?" And looking all disheveled, can't even get ready. And the wife's got shit on lockdown. She actually, Constant Wu, is like a recipe, a cookbook author, is like her actual job. And husband can't even be bothered to get some damn breakfast. Come on. Okay, I'm with you. I was struggling to find where that one happened in a lot of the stuff that I watched. But Lyle Crocodile, literally this past week on vacay, we were watching that. So, okay, I'm with you. All right, number one for me, bullying in the lunchroom. Every movie that has bullying in the lunchroom, I feel like inevitably somebody's getting some Jello on their head. We are so wasteful again. Of always the food has to be a part of it, where somebody's face is getting smashed, somebody's food's getting taken, stolen, mashed potatoes, put on somebody's face, smeared on something. Some shit is always going down in the lunchroom. And for me, my example, I was like, well, let me flip this really quick. It's still gross and disgusting, but I went to Spider-Man 1, OG Tobey Maguire against Joe Manganiello, right? Playing Flash the bully when Mary Jane, Kirsten Dunst, falls and he catches everything on the tray and then gets stuck to the tray. The tray goes and flips onto Flash. So maybe I liked it a little bit because the bully got a little bit of comeuppance there. But just, it's again, wasting food and just, I can't stand the look of food all over people. Like it's fucking disgusting because it reminds me of like times in restaurants and kitchens where somebody drops the 5-gallon bucket of XYZ and it shoots up and it's all over everything. So not only is it disgusting, it's also incredibly wasteful. And I don't know, it just sets me off. I don't know what it is, man, but bullies in the lunchroom, that's number one for me.
Word.
Oh, what a list. All right, man. We spent a lot of time on that one. I feel like that one dug deep. Let us know about our list. Let us know about some that you appreciate or don't appreciate. Those cliche food scenes. Let us know. All right, let's get into the Bear, episode 5 of season 2. This is Pop. And
the real always, episode 5 this time.
This is 5.
Yep, the real one.
I got it wrong last time. I'm trying to keep track. It's because our episode number, because the first episode of this series, we started with the recap of season 1. So our episode number of the show and our episode number of Restaurants and Pop Culture are not in sync. So I keep fucking that up. I apologize, people. All right. As always, we're going to give you our out of 10 rankings in 3, 2, 1. 7.4.
6.9.
You're in the 6s? 6.9. We flipped back. Man, we flipped back. All right. So 2 episodes ago, I was high, you were low. Last episode, we went back to more of a normal. You were high, I was low. And now you're down in, this is your first episode below a 7. All right, man. I mean, 6.9 isn't a bad score, but it's not a great score either. Give us some rationale here on this episode, Pop, which was directed by Joanna Callow and written by Sophia Levitsky-Whites. Let's see why you didn't appreciate their episode. Come on.
All right. So I won't say, don't say I didn't appreciate it. I appreciated it. This is a very respectable 6.9. And what I mean by that is like, it wasn't a bad episode. It's still above a 5. And it wasn't like a bad episode per se. It just wasn't that enthralling. It's one of those that I knew from jump was going to have to happen periodically, which is just one of those episodes where you have to have filler that lays the foundation for other things to happen. As expansive as the story is getting, where we've expanded outside of the restaurant and getting personal with people with their lives outside of the restaurant and some of the inner workings of opening a restaurant, there's just going to be some episodes that aren't very quote unquote action packed or drama filled or whatever. And it's necessary for as building blocks and building a foundation for later. So I get that. And I appreciate that. But by the same token, it's just in terms of entertainment factor, it just wasn't as exhilarating or, you know, interesting for me as some of the others. But I recognize why it had to be that way. You know, I'm not
You
one of
can
those
just hate
people
on the
that feels
episode.
like
I'm fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't like an episode where somebody got some fulfillment, where somebody got to experience something. It felt like there was definitely
But
some
it's
piecing
like,
some things together.
right, but I had to put it that way because certain people talk about how much, like a lot of feedback when I've seen people talk about what they liked or didn't like about the show. There's been a lot of people that say they don't like how the rest or how the show goes out of the restaurant and is getting into the people's personal lives and stuff like that, and that's part of the things that they hate about the show. I'm not like that. I actually enjoy that because I also recognize that there's only so much you can put into a show where all you're seeing is restaurants. Like all you're seeing is the inside of the restaurant. There's only so many hectic services. There's only so many hectic interpersonal arguments between the co-stars on the line in the kitchen before it becomes like a one-trick pony and starts to become monotonous. So I recognize that this is necessary. It's just one of those that, you know, isn't the most fun.
I'll stay with some of the criticism stuff that you're talking about with this. So number one criticism of this episode for me is Carmy and Claire. I just don't get it. I haven't to this point. It has not furthered the story in any interesting ways at all for me. And in fact, it's making me, which I think is maybe part of what they're trying to do, go, I don't really care about Carmy that much. I mean, he had that one monologue, which I thought was so powerful. And other than that, he's kind of been just a sounding board for other characters. And Claire, I'm okay, fine. There you have some history there, and there's obviously some like romantic stuff. But how did this episode go and turn into Party of Five? Like, how did we end up with like a 90s, you know, like rom-com TV show going on where we're at the house party? It made no sense to me. That part made no sense to me whatsoever. So I'm with you 100% there. Coach K, why are we so upset with Coach K? Christopher Storr? Somebody went to Duke because we were spending way too much time on Coach K in this and that book that Sidney hauls around everywhere, even though for some reason she hates it, but is you know, powering through it apparently. So those were a couple things that didn't really jive with me. But I want to show a clip real quick, and I want to talk about restaurant opening for just a while, because the restaurant opening side of this is what I really appreciated about this episode and about this show in general. So let's check out this clip, and then you and I talk a little bit about opening restaurants.
Gotta be honest, I'm becoming concerned that we are taking our eye off the ball here. And I just want to be shut the fuck up, hyper clear. If I ain't seeing no progress, I do not want to keep pissing money away. I'm calling this out now because we are how far from open, Joe? 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And I somehow anticipated in the coming 6 weeks there will be more pissing. Thing is, I like to control the piss to the best of my ability. Shut the fuck up, Richard. Your schedule is king. You're doing whatever the fuck you're doing here. Thundernuts is out there making sandwiches for his whole family. I mean, look, much as I look forward to selling this place, and trust me, I do look forward to it, I think it's just in all of our best interests if we have a maximally efficient place of business. I really would like to tell you a story of complete and utter failure.
We got one. Wants a signing bonus, but we got one.
What's his on-base percentage, Chef?
What is it, sports? It's standard operating procedure.
Thank you, Chef. We'll talk about this later.
Okay, we also have to talk about small wires.
Yep, thank you, Chef.
Great, thank you, Chef.
Wiring is in. We gotta lock it up.
Yes, let's keep that safe, please.
Don't worry, cuz I got it dialed.
Just like you had the contractor dialed? How you doing?
Yeah, exactly like that. Is now a good time to talk about those Taylor Swift tickets? How we doing?
I don't know, Rich. Is now a good time to talk about you go fuck yourself?
Uncle bringing it, man. Oliver Platt, always entertaining. And this reality check of opening a restaurant are some real conversations that I've had to have. I know you've had to have in this process of opening restaurants. Really challenging. There's just no way they're opening in 6 weeks. If we're having a reality check on what it takes to open a restaurant with where they're at right now. And so this coming to Jesus type scenario is a real thing in restaurants. And Cicero is laying it down, and I think is an important scene in this show. And what's happening within opening the restaurant, what precipitated the part of the episode where it turned into Party of Five with Carmy and Claire, was him basically dropping what I'm pretty sure is a bribe to grease some wheels of somebody into the mailbox. Right, those are the type of things that may or may not happen in restaurant openings, where you got to grease some people to this is just the way things work. I like that Taylor Swift got another shout out. Richie is the T Swift fan with his daughter. So I think that to me really stood out was the opening restaurant pieces. And real quick, while they're opening the restaurant, Tina says, I need a knife. And Carmy gifts her that badass, like Damascus steel folded Japanese knife. You and I could have bought multiple cars with the amount of those types of knives that we've bought in the kitchen. I know. And then she goes, let's fucking go. As soon as she opens up that knife, I love that feeling for any chef at any time. So there was this energy that I appreciate about it. That's a little bit frenetic, a little bit chaotic, and it didn't have a lot of resolution, to your point. Appreciate that though, about that. And opening a restaurant, I feel like they are doing a really good job of showing the tensions of it, even if there's lots of unbelievable things that aren't the way that you open a restaurant. The tension of it, the way that Sid flew in there going, we got somebody. Like, I fucking hired a cook. Finally, like, thank God I was able to find somebody. Like, it's real stresses that go on in opening a restaurant. And you want to talk about smallwares and plateware and a chaos menu and all these things, but the reality is, like, there's always some fire to put out, literally and figuratively. So that's what I appreciate about that. Your take from the opening a restaurant side of this episode.
Yeah, I think that this is great perspective, and I resonated with a lot of it. There's also one of the things that I'm keeping my eyes open for is the growing resentment that seems to be brewing between Sidney towards Carmy, because of him not being around in the capacity that she wants him to be or needs him to be. Like, she needs his input on the menu, and she needs his input on the smallwares and things like that. And he's got so many things going on while still trying to foster this personal relationship with what's her name? Claire?
Molly Gordon? Claire?
Yeah. And so Sidney is just like, you could see that things are starting to, like, the flame just got turned on a little bit. It's starting to simmer a little bit. And we got a couple tidbits a couple episodes ago where people are saying, like, make sure you trust your partner. And all
her
that.
whole episode going around Chicago was make sure you have a good partner, trust a partner. Like, that was the undertone of that. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so
so you think they're going to have a falling out? Is that what you think is going to happen? Or they're leading to that tipping point?
I think so. I think that they're going to have, it's either going to be like, it's going to be some sort of falling out. She's probably going to have some sort of meltdown, similar to what they've been alluding to from her previous behavior off screen before she comes out.
And you saw that tick.
Yeah.
Right. That she had when they're doing the tasting, and Tina's like, it's too much. It's too much. So Tina's showing some maturity and pulling her back. Sidney did pull back, but you could see there was that little, like, look. They really stuck on her face to make sure you see she's got a little bit of a tick going there, huh?
Yeah. And there's also just like something that I resonated with that I'm sure a lot of cooks, especially in the fine dining sphere, have dealt with, of trying to reel themselves back from not putting too many elements on the plate. Like, we've all been there where your brain keeps going, oh, I could add this, I can add this. The next thing you know, you've got 20 touches on a plate, and it doesn't make sense anymore. And so, like, then you're like, okay.
He's talking about me, people. He's talking about some of the menus I put out at row 14 when he was sous chef going, Jensen, what the fuck are you doing? Just because you can does not mean you should.
I wasn't gonna name any names, but
this guy right here. Oh man. Yep, that's 100%. Okay. All right. So I like this. I like that we don't agree on everything on these episodes. That's the thing that I think is great about this show, is that it's pulling from a lot of different potential perspectives and experiences, some shared lived experiences. Other are ones that we know of or heard of or are just tropes across the industry. So I appreciate that about the show. Oh man, the criticisms. One thing, I'm going to totally bury the lead here on this one, but the instructor at the culinary school calling Tina chef, I about lost my shit. Like I almost took that down 2 more points just because of that. I've mentioned it. I've been harking on it that I don't think that that's the way that the should be interacting at all times because of the reality of the situation within restaurants. Then I had something to say about Luca, Will Poulter's character, saying that to Marcus just out of the blue, calling him chef, which I was thinking that maybe that's Carmi that he's talking about. So maybe Carmi is the one who got him saying chef to everybody. So maybe it does make sense, but definitely does not make sense that a instructor at a culinary school is going to call a student chef. They are so stuck in the hierarchy of the brigade system and, you know, that whole hut cuisine that there's no chance that they would ever call a student chef. So I think they might be getting a little out of left field here when it comes to calling everybody chef. It's just not realistic. There you go. I don't know if that's a horrible way to end the show, but that was my thought on that. I'm right on that one at least, though. Come on, right?
Yeah, no, I'll give you that.
All right.
Oh, there's one thing too that like one dynamic that I'm interested in seeing also where it goes is there's also brewing tension between Richie and what's Natalie? Yeah, Natalie. I mean, she's dealing with being pregnant and she's trying to like handle everything, and Richie trying so hard not to be obsolete that he's like overreaching past his skill set, and everything he's touching is turning to shit, and like, and then he's not even really wanting to own up to it, and so he's like trying to justify why he did things or why it should have been that way, and Natalie's always left holding the bag and dealing with it, and like you could tell that there's something brewing where they're gonna hash it out too. So there's a few situations where you're gonna see. I feel like some of these tensions boil over between people. I'm also interested in seeing what happens with Tina and Ibrahim because she's been really
dropping out of
allowing herself. Huh? Yeah, he's dropping out. She's not around, and she like she's been reluctant to start her own social life with the people at school because she's used to like Ibrahim was her homie, and so like she's used to kicking it with him, and so now it's like she's begrudgingly trying to reach out to him first, and when he's not, then she's like, okay, well I guess I'll go home.
And she didn't tell Carmi what's going on with Ibrahim when she asked Carmi, have you heard from Ibrahim? She goes, no. Why? Oh, nothing. She's brushing off, so she recognizes that if she starts telling Carmi he's not showing up to culinary school, that puts Ibrahim in a bad spot, and she doesn't want to put homie in a bad spot, but she's recognizing he's going down that path. Okay, yeah, I like that dynamic. Let's go. All right, next episode, I need some Tina. I need some Lisa Colon Zayas in this episode. And all right, I think that's it. That's all the damage we can do for this episode. So this again, RIP006, Restaurants and Pop Culture, presented by Square Sodas. Let us know. We have a 6.9. 3.2 is finally down into the sixes. I went up at 7.4. Let us know how we did. Let us know your rankings. Let us know what you appreciate, don't appreciate about this episode. That is it for this episode of Restaurant